Let me broach a dangerous subject with you before continuing on. I want to talk about books, and I'm going to ask you to please refrain from giving me too many recommendations. Again, it's always dangerous. But a way to communicate Western culture is through books. That's plain from a number of your writings. I didn't know which one to pull from, so I'm just generally quoting you, so not to offend all the rest of you. There are great books. There are good books. There's books on adventures. There's books for boys. There's books for girls. I did find one quote that I like. Cheryl Lowe said, "The classicals of Greek and Rome are not optional. If we skip them, we have no hope at all of teaching literature with any real understanding or meaning." And being, let's see, I'm going to say halfway through my Greek in a year that I'll probably finish in maybe a year and a half if I'm doing well. I can attest to that. I remember reading the Odyssey in 11th grade, so junior year. And then when I picked up the book recently, I realized my teacher lied to me. It starts in chapter 9. She started in chapter 9, 1 to 11. There's more to the Odyssey than just there's a whole thing with Odysseus's son and mentor and all these things. But one of the things I did like was reading a young Patrick versus an old Patrick for the Odyssey. I would have loved reading about the battles, but I loved now being a father reading that intimate story of Hector holding his child while his wife was pleading him not to go out in the battlefield, and he said, "I must." I was just like, that's a scene for me. Young Patrick would have killed for the battles, but I'm there for the moment. So I'm trying to do my due diligence before my daughters catch up to me and overread me. But why are books and great books and good books there in the classical to educate our children? Why not just what we've been doing over the past 80 years? I'm trying to remember when I got out of school. 80 years for textbooks. Textbooks generalize facts and bits together. We can read history that way, but why books that we can pick off our shelves and not just I'm also a member of reading the ones behind me as well, and they go that way too.
Yeah, well, number one, they're boring, textbooks. But number two, I think the whole idea of a story, a narrative, is hugely important.
Yes.
And I said the other day on social media, I said, one of the reasons I believe in Christianity is because it has the best story.
Yeah.
And so I think that textbooks are shooting information at you. And information is different from knowledge. Knowledge really requires some kind of context. And the best kind of context to have is a story, right? History, properly told, is a story. It's got a context. And that's what enables it to be a moral lesson. Same thing with literature, because there's several things you need to know, and you can only know these things if you have a narrative context, a story, all right, and it's you gotta think about doing an action. It was an action moral. Is it an action done to or with the appropriate person at the appropriate time, in the appropriate place, for the appropriate reason, and in the appropriate way? And the only way you can tell what is appropriate is in some narrative context where you've got everything in front of you and you've got the characters and all this stuff. And there's no way to answer those questions outside a story, right? And so I think if we want to be able to if we want to have a moral education, which is probably the most basic aspect of education, we have to do it in some kind of story form. We have to have it in literature and in history to understand what even morality is, not, much less to know how to be a moral person ourselves, right? And so I think there's a real what's the word I'm looking for here? There's a real attitude on the part of educators today that the humanities are not important. It's the first thing that gets dropped to do test prep or whatever else you're doing in school. It's always literature and history. Those are the most important things in the curriculum, right? You've got all the other, you got the math, you've got the languages. Those are all, important. But but it's history and literature. That's where we are learning what our civilization is, and it's where we are learning what morality is. And I just think that if we don't keep those things, then we're not doing ourselves any service.
Uh, Selfishly, let me ask this question: is it okay not to like some of the great books? Yeah, I've read Adam on the Road, and I didn't like it.
Hmm.
I read the autobiography of Ben Franklin, and I'm waiting for him to get to any semblance of the
Hmm.
revolution. And then
Hmm.
I get to a point where he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry. My children have told me that I must write more. I've ended the story too much." I was like, "Yes, here it is." Old Ben Franklin has just gone off his rocker. And I loved having him talk about how much money that he gave to bring over the Great Awakening
Hmm.
speakers to give people something to hope for, and then he just ends. He just ends the book.
Hmm.
I don't appreciate that. I mentioned Aeschylus. I cannot get over him. But I also feel in the same question. Then is it okay not to like the great books? And I feel like maybe it's my American side of like if I'm reading the Odyssey without pulling from, I pulled from Catholic literature and podcasts and Reformed Romans Road Press have really helped me out understanding these. But I feel like if I didn't have those tools, I wouldn't get anything of them other than a battle happened. There's some
Hmm.
heroes. They're really mad for not giving the prostitute or the priestess to be harem. I feel like I'm missing something. So can I not like great books? And what do I do with that individual American spirit that I want to know everything by myself?
Yeah. Well, number one, what you're saying is that not all great books are good.
Mm,
And you are correct,
okay, good.
actually, in that. And not all good books are great. And in fact, they're John Senior's idea that, you need to read the 1,000 good books before you can approach the 100 great books. The great books require some background, right?
Mm,
And they're best come to if you already have a broad knowledge of things from the good books, right? I mean, all those books that were just common fare when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s, a lot of those are gone. I mean, I really think this is one of the important things about classic children's literature is number one, they introduce you to what a story is,
mm,
how to read a story. But then they as they get more and more sophisticated as you go up in the intended age and an audience for those things, they start presenting you with ideas that you have to, at a very simple level, that you have to think about. And so I think anybody who grew up and they weren't a reader and now they're trying to recover themselves, particularly people interested in classical education, and they just go straight for these great books. Okay, those were books that were attempted by students who had already learned Latin and Greek. Okay, up until fairly recently, so no wonder you don't enjoy it, right? So you really have to prepare yourself for reading the great books, and you do it by being generally literate and by reading a lot of the good books. Some people they just need to start at Charlotte's Web, okay,
I did
and
that
or
this
some
summer.
other, yeah, and actually those books in their own kind of limited way are great.
Yeah.
But I think we just need to realize this, and if you're going to read if you're going to read the Iliad and the Odyssey, start. I've got a copy of it out just to see how good it is, but it's also going to take me through the Iliad again, which is the children, the boys' Iliad by Joseph Church. Back at 100 years ago, there were a bunch of books out there that were retellings, simpler retellings of these
Mm,
stories, which you learned first before you ever tackled the real thing, right? So there's just some preparation. You can't just have never done something. You don't do this anywhere else in your life where you've never done something and then you just take it on full bore. No, you're going to hurt yourself. You need to acclimate yourself to this kind of literature, and that's what a classical education really does, actually, if it's done right. And you're not only learning the languages, but you're reading all that great children's literature that used to be taught to children, not Captain Underpants and this sort of thing, or Diary of a Wimpy Child. No, this was good stuff, actually, and it prepared you for the great stuff.
Yeah. I know you don't like it, but I love the Three Musketeers. The swashbuckling aspect to it, I love D'Artagnan challenging three sword fights. I loved it all, other than they were French. So we take what we can get. It's John Calvin. The worst I can say about John Calvin, he was French. But my
I think
daughter,
it's a book that would do better as a retelling. It could be retold better than it, but
yeah, that's why I like the Disney movie for it. It's put everything together too. But my daughter was reading Little Women, but the illustrated version, so more condensed, has illustrations in it. And I made sure to just ask her, "Oh, how are you liking it?" And then she got to the end. I go, "How was the end?" It was so sad, and I loved that she got that experience of reading a sad book from that. But then we also, in the same week, finished Charlotte's Web. I won't spoil anything there too, but she might have been double sad for that. But the fact that at 9, and I'm trying not to just say like, oh, I've got really smart kids, is that she took a story that in all intents and purposes she shouldn't relate to, except those themes, those ideas are universal. The same way that I can read David and Jonathan having an amazing friendship, and then wanting to build that in my own friendships. She's taking those stories and just being able to experience into them, and that's with the help of publishers who have not dumbed down, but who have edited it to an appropriate age. And then the great thing about great books is you can pick it back up again when you're older, and then realize how much you've changed and how much that novel has
right. Well, it's like throwing Shakespeare at somebody who's not a good reader. You don't do that.
Would you suggest? Sorry, would you suggest listening to Shakespeare over reading it at first, or
no? What I would do? Here's what I do. Okay. And
because I'm not there yet, but I need to get there soon.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, when I go to read a new play, I need an overview. Okay, so you can use there's a number of these out there. Charles and Mary Lamb's Tales from Shakespeare. Just read that story that's in there being retold, right? And then go and read it and mark it. You're still not going to understand it. And then go and either see it performed, right? After you've gone through the story once and the play itself once, so you've gone through the story twice, then you're going to have you're better prepared to see it, right? You've got some background there. But also, there are some great commentators on Shakespeare, and their commentaries are great literature in and of themselves. Harold Goddard is the chief one. He's the one I go to talk about the particular play. Harold Bloom is the other one, who I think is a really great commentator on. He's got some peculiarities to him in other areas, but he's a great Shakespeare commentator. And read what he says about it. And then, with Shakespeare, you got to read the plays over and over again, ultimately, to really understand them. But that's the progression I go in. Don't feel like you're cheating if you go and you read a retelling of some sophisticated thing like a Shakespeare play. No, that's what you should do. That's what they used to do in schools. Okay?
So I shouldn't hang my head in shame that I'm devaluing Shakespeare by not.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, good. Okay, good. I'm feeling better about just reading the Cliff Notes version at times too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Cliff Notes are great as long as they're great preparation, but they're a very poor substitute.
True. I did get Shakespeare for the modern audience, so it has the original, and then on the other side like a help for it, and I'm looking forward to seeing how much I need to go to the right hand of the page versus the left hand. So
Right, right. Yeah. Well, I prefer the older retellings, like Charles and Mary Lamb.
okay.
I don't know that book, so I can't critique it, but those are the ones I've always resorted to, and they're always very good. There were so many good books for children, 50, 75, 100 years ago, and they did this kind of thing. They were trying to make the classics available to younger children,
Hmm.
and they did a great job of this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why my personal library is now extending into these are the books that I want my children to look at and someday pick up off the shelves. I've got
Mhm.
even a shelf for the. I was reading these books when I fell in love with reading. My
Mhm.
Side of the Mountain, Hatchet, Indian in the Cupboard,
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
I've got a shelf full of those. Calvin and Hobbes
absolutely.
is in there too, so those
Yes.
were formidable. But
Mhm.
yeah, okay, good. And I also do believe in marking up your books. It's a-okay to do as long as they're not
Absolutely.
collector's items. So I'm with you there.